The train horns blare louder and louder. Your heart is exploding within your chest as you rush around the train station, desperately seeking a way to save the innocent lives in danger. The train continues to hurtle towards the station, and in the midst of confused screams and terrified panic, your only hope is to find something, anything, strong enough to stop the train. Your Hail Mary comes in the form of a lever, but now you're faced with two choices. You can either do nothing, stand back, and let the train continue on its warpath, claiming the lives of 5 rail workers. Or you can pull the lever and divert the train's tracks, saving the lives of 5 people, at the same time condemning 1 innocent person to die. The pressure is on you now. Do you choose to kill 1 person, or do you choose to let 5 other people die? For decades, the brilliant minds of philosophers, scientists, and the like have all grappled with these questions. How do we honor individual rights in this situation? What right do we have to play God to decide this person's future? In case you have committed to living your life like Patrick Starr and call the bottom of a rock your home, let me explain what the problem is. The trolley problem is a well-known philosophical puzzle designed to test a person's ethical capabilities and moral priorities. It was first introduced by Philippa Foot in 1967, but was named by Judith Jarvis Thomson 9 years later. I would like to tell you guys, it didn't get its name until almost a decade after its conception. How crazy is that? In case you haven't heard the problem, you're at a train station presented with 2 choices. You can either let the malfunctioning train continue on its path, killing 5 innocent workers who are stuck on the tracks. Or you can pull a lever which diverts the train's tracks, saving the 5 people, but also condemning 1 innocent person to die. Now, on the surface, this seems simple enough, right? I mean, to many people, the obvious choice would be to pull the lever and divert the train's tracks, even if it is at the cost of 1 person's life. But this can be easily muddled where personal connections are involved. Maybe not for you. Maybe your morals are as clear as black and white. So let's put that to the test, shall we? What if I were to tell you that the 1 person tied to the tracks was a doctor on the verge of curing cancer, but in the group of 5 was your best friend? Would that impact your decision? Let's kick this up a notch. Why don't we take this problem out of a hypothetical and put it into the real world? In the events following the disaster of Chernobyl, the Russian government was placed in a similar situation, having to decide whether or not they should intervene in order to protect the rest of the population. Spoiler alert, they chose to pull the metaphorical lever. But in both situations, there's a choice to make. You can either choose to save the most amount of people or save the people with the highest potential to contribute to society. Now, the blood is on your hands. After all, regardless of what you choose, you are responsible for the loss of a life. Don't worry, you're not alone on this rocky boat. Aside from the people sitting next to you, I was also once in the same situation, having to decide between whether or not I would make the more popular choice or the other one. Now, by now, I've studied everything I've done. I've researched all I could, and in all my studies, the one common thing that everybody could agree on was that there was no simple solution. And the idea of who to save is one of the many aspects we study when looking at the main themes of the trolley problem, particularly utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the ideology that the right action is the action which maximizes happiness for the greatest number of people. If anybody is a fan of Star Trek, I'm sure you'll recognize the quote, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Utilitarianism was first theorized by John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham, and typically represents elements of Western society in forms of media and literature. And when we look at American society, or really Western societies in general, we see a closer alignment to utilitarian ideals. a sentiment which has only since skyrocketed since the pandemic of COVID-19. Now, being useful to yourself and others isn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, service to your society is the means to promote your society. But it also doesn't live up to the full potential of mankind theorized by many other philosophers. I'm assuming most of us, if not all of us, know who Aristotle is. Greek philosopher, long white beard, and if you're anything like me who sucks at math, you have Aristotle to thank for that, with 25 different innovations in mathematics. Aside from his genius in math, he also studied virtue ethics. See, the problem with utilitarianism is that even though it's pretty cool, it also focuses exclusively on the consequence of the action and the morality of the consequence. But Aristotle, being the trailblazing pioneer that he was, instead chose to build up on Socrates' base and determined that the individual should also consider the morality of the action itself. This also goes along with his teaching that the greatest potential for happiness came from contemplation. Needless to say, in this line of thought, the value of the problem lies less in its ability to give us a final, decisive answer, and more so the provocation of thought that it offers to everybody who partakes. The journey rather than the destination. This is, of course, a stark contrast from utilitarianism, which focuses on the implementations of the consequence and the societal implications. After all, when you have to look at the consequence, the action seems pretty important. In today's day and age, we're entering a new world of interconnectedness, thanks to the magical lizard man who collects and sells our data to Mars aliens. All jokes aside, with this new level of interconnectedness, now we have the inevitable domination of Western culture and philosophy, which is ultimately dominated by utilitarian ideals. Don't get me wrong here. Being able to save the most amount of people isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, it's pretty great. But in the sense where a utilitarian society has to face this dilemma, we see a higher push for the prioritization of the collective welfare and happiness, whereas with an Eastern society, there would be more of a different approach, focusing instead on the virtues of life, the values of the individual, and the ultimate morality of the situation itself. But if you're going to insist on a thesis statement, while utilitarianism focuses on the collective happiness and efficiency, it also disregards the morality of the situation and the intricate value of each and every human being, while also ignoring the moral complexities of such a situation implemented in the real world, where not everything is so black and white. Whereas, on the other hand, with a deontological standpoint, we see that the problem is approached a little differently, focusing instead on the morality of the action and the consequence, and the virtues of life itself. Now, as my time with you all comes to a close today, some of you may continue to wonder, what is the right answer? Well, hear me out here. What if there was no right answer? Truth be told, the trolley problem is a fatally flawed question, and at the end of the day, no matter what you choose, there is still a loss of life. So, I'm going to pose the question to you all now. What would you choose? Thank you.